Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Drive and Discuss, your go-to podcast on wheels. And today we are talking about a very controversial topic within the car scene and within the global car market, I suppose, in general. And that is the upcoming ban of petrol and diesel cars within the next sort of 5 to 10 years, it's estimated. Now, that is obviously an estimate that's sort of been thrown around for probably the last 10 years. That's when it's going to happen. Now, do I think it's going to happen? Do I think there's a chance? Yes, there is a chance that they're going to go ahead with that. Do I think it's likely? Probably not, because they'll start to realise that it still isn't possible. And there's many reasons behind why it is a possible thing to happen currently, and probably for a while. And most of that is still down to their point about emissions. Now, emissions in general, there's a lot of factors causing obviously the rise in emissions, and a few of those would be sort of like scrapping the cars. So scrapping disposing of the petrol and diesel cars would be difficult, because there's some people that they're thinking of just doing the new cars. Obviously that's fair enough, you could stop producing the new cars, that's all right. Obviously it's not good for the car scene, it's not good for most people, but the amount of emissions that it would take to scrap cars prematurely, because if you're going to stop making them, then there's going to be because they want to stop emissions. So you're reducing the amount of petrol and diesel you produce, which means more and more people will be unable to obviously run their cars, so they'll start scrapping their cars early, and the emissions it's going to take to scrap petrol and diesel cars is going to be astronomical, because you've got to think about how you're going to break down all these materials, how are you going to reduce them down, how the landfill is going to be, and emissions for the global warming and all of that is not going to be good. It's not going to work at all. And then you've got to look at how a battery is made. Well, with lithium, obviously. And where do you get lithium from? Mines. Does that create, obviously, does that create sort of emissions that are very bad for the economy? But no. Does that create... So then what you've got to look at is, obviously, emissions and when you're making batteries. Because what a battery's made of? Lithium. Where do you get lithium from? Mining. And why does that cause more and more issues? Well, when you think about it, mining obviously creates a lot of chemicals, and it produces a lot of harmful emissions to obviously the atmosphere, and that obviously is what they want to stop. So you've got to find a way to efficiently and sustainably gather these materials to make batteries, while also making it cost effective and safe for the environment. Now, is it possible? Well, at the moment it doesn't seem like it, because all the major companies wanting to make these batteries and use them in their cars, they're all still mining for lithium. Tesla's one of the biggest perpetrators of this, and honestly Apple, when they make their phone batteries, it's the same. Now, another thing that's apparently the statistics, I'm not too 100% sure on how reliable these statistics are, but some people do state that the mining for batteries, the amount of batteries you have to get for cars, is actually worse for emissions than the petrol and diesel cars that are on the road right now for us. And another factor that I think definitely weighs in heavily on that is the sort of life of a battery. So the life of an engine, and obviously all the parts of the petrol and diesel car, they can last 15, 20, 25, 30 years with very minimal need for, replacements if you look after them. However, if you do this with a battery, regardless of how well the person looks after it, how well they care for that battery, after about 8 years, that battery is going to be no good, because obviously batteries degrade very, very quickly. You see it in your phone, you see your battery health plummet, and that's purely because batteries degrade no matter how well you look after it, no matter how well you follow their rules and regulations, it's going to have to be replaced. So every 8 years, you're going to have to make, basically they're going to have to make double the batteries or triple the batteries to, cover every single car that's already out there. It's not like once you've made one car, that's it, done. It's just very bad for the environment as is. Another thing you've got to think of is, how are you going to get all of the electricity to charge all these batteries And can the power grid support it? Because I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't think the power grid is going to be able to support petrol. The power grid's not going to be able to support the intake of need for electricity to charge all these cars. Is it going to be possible? Maybe it is. But one, then you've got to produce all the extra, and then that means more wind farms. You've got to then produce more, the materials to make the wind farms. Solar panels, it's the same thing. You're going to lose the environment. You're going to have to cut down trees and cut down natural resources, cut down and fill fields and everything, farmers' fields, with solar panels to get that electricity. So that's not sustainable in the long run. You're going to cause more deforestation than is already out there, which is obviously already a big issue. It's not really feasible at the moment, and that's sort of the economic reasons behind why it would, or economic and sustainability. So those are reasons why it's not good from obviously a global protection standpoint at the moment. I mean, maybe 20 years time we'll have figured out hydrogen cars might be a bigger option. Another big thing is that we could keep petrol and diesel cars on the road without any real issue if we let companies like Porsche and other big companies out there produce their own sort of sustainable fuel. Now, we know full well, we've known for years, that Porsche are actually already doing this with synthetics, and that synthetics are completely feasible. They already work. We know that they've been able to run them, but we know that governments and people around the world don't want these to exist, mostly because they want to make money. Now, sustainable fuels, lovely, great, it actually works, and it's very sustainable, and it's the closest we're going to ever get to carbon neutral, to that special zero number that everyone's talking about. Now, I love the idea of synthetic fuels. I think if we don't have to make people create alterations for their cars to, and buy new cars in total to get around, if we can just keep their old car, create a fuel that runs without any modifications to fix this, then so be it. That is a brilliant idea. It's one, sustainable, two, cheaper for everyone, so it's easy to get everyone on board, and etc, etc. So overall, that's a very, very nice idea. Now, is at the moment it possible for people to be able to afford synthetic fuels? No, but Porsche and that lot predict that within a few years they can get it down to a reasonable cost. We know it works. We know big motorsports have started using it to run their cars, and we understand that that's not causing too many issues. The cars haven't had to be adapted to run it in any way. We know Porsche tried it in some of their flagship cars, which shows they believe in it and that it worked, and that's completely fine. In some ways, it actually works better. We know that the plants can be constructed to, how the factories can be constructed to build this. We know it takes very minimal chemicals. We know it can be used off of plant matter and waste. So, again, very sustainable. We've got plenty of it. It's a bit like hydrogen, but obviously it's slightly closer and more realistic at the moment than a hydrogen car is. And yeah, I think mostly the reason companies, governments want us to use electric cars is purely from a money standpoint. They want everyone to spend 30-40 grand on a brand new electric car every year or every few years, because no one's going to want to buy a new battery for their car and have to place it in every 8 years. So they want us to buy a new car for 30-40 grand every 8 years. Instead of just letting us keep our cars for 20 years. We don't have the infrastructure to support it because everyone is so heavy set, and I agree it's a big problem like global warming, but because they're trying to capitalize on people's fears for global warming to make money, to improve their own profits, and that is just not on. It's not good. And I think we'll look back at this in a few years and think, that was really not the right idea, and it was definitely not ready to do to undertake what they're asking us to do. And also, from a standpoint of other Yeah, and I think another big thing that I really don't agree with when it comes to electric cars is people like Elon Musk and all of these making their money off of it. Fair enough, it's electric cars, they're cool, but they all look identical. Every single electric car looks identical. Now, there's no creativity in it, nothing. If you go out and you look at I've just seen a lovely classic Golf over there. If you go out and you look at all the cars on the road, petrol and diesel, they all look different. Every single one of them looks different. Obviously, the same cars and same models, but they've all got a unique characteristic about them. Some of them have longer chassis, some of them are more wacky, they're more out there, they're cool. Look at the beautiful cars that have had so many hours of craftsmanship put into them. Cars like Nissan GTR, the Porsche 911, cars like that have just been made perfect. You know, they've had hours and hours and hours, but they're beautiful, they're stunning. That sort of craftsmanship just isn't seen with an electric car. And I want you to keep that in mind, because I think that's really, really, really important, to be honest. And I think, in my opinion, the emissions conclusion and doesn't really, warrant us ridding the world of these beautiful, beautiful pieces of machinery for something that just doesn't wow anyone. And something for a cause where, yes, the cause is big, but the conclusion and the need as of right now doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't warrant us removing these cars. I don't think it works because cars we've got don't need to be destroyed for a cause that we know full well is not fully suited yet. The emissions difference isn't really that greatly big. There isn't really that big of a difference. They all are relatively similar. And I think we could have another 15, 20 years of just the petrol and diesel cars and then work on making something that is carbon neutral, like synthetic fuel. Or maybe we can figure out a way where electric cars can become carbon neutral. And if that's the case, and we can give mechanics and other people proper training, then that's understandable and that's completely okay. And then I would be happy and warm. And I think a lot of other car guys and other people would warm to the idea of electric cars if we could get them to a point where they do seem feasible for everyone. They do work for everyone. And I mean everyone, not just the consumer, people fixing them, for other companies, and for the environment as well. Because at the moment, they don't really help the environment too much. People will lose their jobs if we swap fully to electric. And for most consumers, they're not even worth it. 30 grand for a car that doesn't really do anything different, if not is slightly worse than their daily driver they use at the moment. It doesn't work for me. And that is something that I hold hold it very close to my heart. And I don't think it's right for us to, almost lower people's quality of life and almost degrade and negate other people's beliefs because in the name of the environment, when we haven't really done our proper research yet. We need to take more time thinking about it before we push these things to market, because they're cool cars, don't get me wrong, some of them aren't, but we've seen it with Tesla Roadster. That's been in the works, and they've been saying, it's going to come out for the last 8 years. That thing still hasn't come out because they haven't even started producing it, because we haven't done the research and we're not there yet. Seriously, we're not there yet. And people aren't going to experience the thrill of driving. We're going to lose that car seat. People are going to lose the enthusiasm. And that's just going to kill something that's been extremely big for the last, nearly 100 years now. And we're going to kill it over something we haven't done enough research on. And for all we know, more research will probably come up in the future where people will go, wow, electric cars are a really stupid idea, weren't they? Now that we look back at it, they were worse for the environment than we thought. And we should have just started petrol, because I could see people looking at this 50 years down the line and going, if we just waited, it could have been something great, but we rushed it to market and it wasn't worth it. Just wasn't worth it. All look the same. All the Teslas, they're just bigger versions of each other. They all look the same. You look at other electric cars that are out there, they all look very similar to Tesla. They're all these boxy things. They don't look right. There's no creativity. There's no uniqueness about them. It's just lazy. And it's because they want to just reduce the cost. If we just reuse what we're already doing, just re-promote it and make it bigger, it reduces costs for companies. They can make a bigger profit margin and they get better. They get more money, basically. No, I'm not. You can probably tell by now. I am definitely not a fan of electric cars. I don't like them. There are some that I think, yeah, pretty cool. But I'm not a fan of electric cars. I'm all for synthetic fuels, and if we can get them to work, I say we, if Porsche and that lot get them to work, get these synthetic fuels out there, and get other big companies like Shell and stuff on board, I would be all for it. Even if it costs that little bit more to keep these cars on the road, it would be much better, because I think it would, one, sustainability. It would save the I think it would, one, from a sustainability standpoint, it is an improvement. It is much better just to keep a sustainable, keep current cars on the road and just run them off with new fuel that's low emission. That is by far the best way to go, no doubt about it. And I think electric cars, for some people, they're really good. For some people, they're good. They do what people want them to do. At the moment, they're the closest to sustainable, I suppose, when you actually have the cars on the road, everyday use. However, I think in a few years, they won't be as prominent as they are now. Again, another thing is, for most people, they're not ideal cars. Most people won't work for most people, and that's because another reason is their range. Electric cars, a lot of them, even their long range versions, don't have the sort of mileage, the range that petrol and diesel cars have. The BMW 1 Series 116D, so the diesel BMW 1 Series, for about 10 years ago, you can pick one up for about $6,000, $7,000. They have 80 miles to the gallon and about 800-mile range. Right, 800 miles. Right, 800 miles of fuel. That means people can do longer runs and be completely fine. Whereas when you look at a electric car, a lot of them these days have maybe 300, 200 miles of range at $20,000 a car. The cheapest you can really get for an electric car at the moment, if you want something that's a car, not a Citroen. It doesn't make financial sense for most people to go out and buy a $20,000 car that only does half the stuff their $10,000 car could do. The amount of computers in them as well, there's no real raw driving experience. Oh, that's beautiful, that car over there. But that driving experience, it's, a lot of them cars, they've got too many computers. I don't like the screens to them. They're massive. They're too out there. They all look the same inside. Then there's no craftsmanship anymore, and craftsmanship's going to be completely out the window, because they just want to get electric cars out the fastest they can for the cheapest possible cost that they can. So they're not the best built, especially for crash protection. Some of them are good when you're at the actual scene of the accident. As soon as you make the contact and the accident happens, they're very, very safe. But if there's a fire and your car, catches fire, it's electric, they often burn for weeks on end. Think of the amount of CO2 and emissions that produces. A regular car fire can be devastating, don't get me wrong, but we know how to put them out. We can put them out relatively quick. An electrical fire, especially an electric car fire where you've got these massive batteries and motors and all these electrics in them, they can burn for weeks. We don't know how to put them out. They can be extremely dangerous, especially if you're in somewhere where there's a lot of foliage and tree growth. It's just not ideal. It's not really safe. And for me, I don't like electric cars. I mean, look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. They're probably great for some people, especially if you live in a big city or a bigger country like America where the infrastructure's kind of built for that. Concrete cities, you know, the infrastructure and the electrics built for that. America, it's perfect to have an electric car. You've got a charging point every like 5 minutes down the road. But in like the UK and most European countries, we're still very much not designed for that. You know, there's petrol stations every sort of 10 minutes. That's fair enough because we're built for that. There's, you know, mechanics everywhere. That's okay because we're built for this. We don't have the electricity, you know, the national grid's not supported, you know, won't be able to support electric cars. We don't have mechanics necessarily capable. Think of all the mechanics who are going to lose their job if they've been taught how to fix a petrol car or a diesel car when electric cars come along. We don't have the infrastructure in Europe to do that, and that's not because we're behind. It's because we aren't set up. That's not our I suppose mindset. That's not how we were. That's not how the countries were designed. We could swap to that, but it's going to again take more emissions, cost more money, and at the moment it's not feasible. So I think if you sort of understand what I mean, I think at the moment America and those sort of countries, America, it's probably fair enough to go for electric cars. You know, you've got the infrastructure and they're working towards that. But for European countries and people like myself, I think we need to really get behind synthetic fuels and make it show our governments that that's better, because I don't want to see classic cars, petrol and diesel cars, all these amazing, wonderful cars that people have put hundreds of hours into designing and manufacturing to go to waste, to be scrapped just because of another move. Like, I could see anything, any sort of car. There's some lovely cars on the road, and you go, wow, that's cool, even if it's just a regular day-to-day driver of a car. Do you get what I mean? Every electric car just looks the same. They don't wow me. I think it's such a shame to just destroy the great stuff everybody's created over, well, in the name of emissions, when there's not as much research being done as possible. It actually isn't that much better for the environment than petrol or diesel cars are, really. And I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover today. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, remember to leave a like, subscribe. You know the rest. Everyone else told you millions and millions of times. I am sure. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. But if you guys have, last thing to say, if you guys have anything else that you want me to mention on this matter, and on petrol cars, if you've got any other information that maybe I missed out, don't be afraid to comment it down below, and maybe I'll make a second video of this, because I do feel very strongly, obviously, about this topic. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let's see you all in the next one.
Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.
Look at that sound these cars make. These cars ain't fridges. As Jeremy Clarkson once said, these cars aren't fridges. And you're never going to hear that sound growing up anymore. You're never, ever going to hear the great sound of an engine when you put your foot down, and that joy that it brings. You don't get any joy from an electric car, but you do get joy from a petrol or diesel one. Goodbye for now.